Hey Boxers, this is part 2 in the video series How to Make a Game Like Voodoo. In this video series, we are making a flat version of the game Gate Rusher. In this game, you have a main character who goes through little hoops along a path, and if you do not make it into the hoop, then your character is defeated. Now let's go ahead and let's add in some loops, and then we're going to change all the colors so that it looks more pleasing, because let's be honest, these walls and this purple ground and the orange character, those colors do not go well together, so we're going to change those up later. So let's go ahead, let's add in a ring or two, and we're going to make those be the point system, just like in Gate Rusher. So I'm going to go to my asset library, I'm going to select a torus, and I'm going to double click on it. And then I'm going to select the asset library again, so it takes me out of the asset library. I'm going to bring in a torus, and I'm going to change the rotation on this in the X direction to 90 so that you can see it's standing upright now, okay? And I'm going to move this a little bit out this way. I'm probably going to scale it a little bit because it needs to be a little bit bigger for this. Okay, perfect. I think that looks about right. Might even be a little bit too big, but that's okay. I think you want it to be a little bit forgiving in this situation. Okay, so now we've got our ring here. And so the character is going to try to go through this ring, but let's also try to add in a point here underneath so that when the character collides with this point, it shows it on the score. So I'm going to go to my asset library, and I'm going to actually go to my smart assets, and I'm going to use a point right here. So I'm going to just double click on this, and it adds the point to my library. You can also use a hoop for this demonstration as well, but I'm going to go ahead and just use a point and a regular old torus for this. So let's go ahead and drag in our point real fast. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the collision shape. Okay, looks like the collision shape's good. It's this nice little sphere. So I'm going to turn off the collision shape right now. I'm going to scale this out just a little bit more so that it fills up the whole space of the torus here. It looks good underneath, fits under there perfectly. Okay, but I also want this to be invisible. So let's go ahead and change the color on this. So I'm going to double click on this, and a real easy way to change the coloring on this is to just get rid of the 3D model. Just take that 3D model node and delete it. So now when we go back into our 3D world, it's nowhere to be found. It's gone. And then let's make sure that if we're colliding, we want to make sure that this if collide node works correctly. Right now it's set to affected asset all, but what we want to do is we want to make it collide with the main character. Okay, and then I'm going to turn on physics as well on the start node so that the character can actually collide with this sphere, because if it doesn't have the physics there, it's just going to pass right through it. And I want it to also stay static. I don't want those points to be affected by gravity or anything like that. So I want it to just stay where it's at. So let's go ahead and let's test this out right now. I'm going to select my point in my torus. I'm going to hold Command or Control on my keyboard, depending on which computer you're using. And I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to hit Command C on my keyboard because I'm using a Mac, or you can use Control C if you're using a Windows. I'm going to go into my start scene, and I'm going to paste it in. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move them both like this so I can just test it out. Basically, the cube's going to go just straight forward under this hoop. It's going to hit the point, and we're going to see if it shows up. So let's go ahead and preview this right now. So we've got this cube passing underneath these hoops, and it's giving us a little point. So that's looking pretty good. I'm liking the way that this is looking, and I think what would be cool is to add in some lines over here onto the side so that it's kind of decorative. And we also need to add in some walls so that if you try to go outside of the ring, or if let's say you miss the ring, your character is defeated. And so let's go ahead and make sure that that's working as well. Okay, so once again, we've got our character. I'm going to preview this over again. You can see the character is going through the loops, and it is getting points. And so this is perfect. Okay, and so we're going to fix this up a little bit more right now. So I'm going to exit out of the preview. And then what I want to do is I want to add in some walls here, some invisible walls that are going to work as enemies, and then when the character runs into them, then the character is going to be defeated. So I'm going to go back here to my asset library, I'm going to go to a shape, and I'm going to make a little invisible wall. So I'm going to add this cube, I'm going to call this cube an enemy. And let's go ahead and, one other thing I wanted to check is we haven't checked to see if the character collides with the wall, if it defeats the character. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's move off to the side. Okay, so you can see it jumped out of the camera right there off the screen. It did defeat the character, but we can't see it. So that's a problem. Let's take the camera and let's move it up and back a little bit. So I'm gonna move it up and back. And now it should be able to see a little bit more. So let's take a look at that. Okay, cool. Almost a little bit too much, I think. I think I went a little bit overboard because you can see that when the scene starts, you see the end of the platform. And that can easily be fixed by increasing the length here. What I'll do is I'll scale this out just like that. And I can scale these as well. I'll hit Command Shift, or I'll hit Command, hold Command, and then select them both. And then now, no problem. Okay, so now we can see that it's working perfectly, and when you run into the wall, it's defeated. But there's something off that's I want to be able to see a little bit further down, so I'm going to change the rotation on the camera to go up a little bit. Yeah, probably not too much, something like that. Okay, so now we should be able to see the character and the length a little bit easier. And okay, this is looking good. Now let's go ahead and let's add in some invisible walls now. There's going to be some enemies in here, and we'll make them invisible. I'm going to drag in an enemy, and it drops it in for me. And I'll move them just like this, and like this. Okay, now let's go ahead and scale this down a little bit so that it's going to be just like a thin little wall. That's what we want. And I will move this, I'll center this out a little bit. Okay, and then I'll scale it out a little bit more. Let's check the collision shape on this as well to make sure that the collision shape is correct. Okay, so let's see here. I don't want this, I want my enemy. And my enemy's collision shape is a little off, it looks like. So let's go ahead and switch that up. So select my enemy. Let's go ahead and change this enemy around a little bit. But first, before I do that, I'm going to add another if collide. I'm going to hook this up so that if it collides with the enemy, then the character is going to be defeated. It should be the exact same thing. Let's go ahead and make sure that that's working properly. So I'm going to go into my 3D world. I'm going to select my enemy. I'm going to give this some physics, and I'm going to make it static so that it's not moving anywhere, but it can be collided with. And then once I want to make it invisible, I'll delete the 3D model, but for right now I'm going to just leave it so that I can actually see it, so I can test it out to see if it's colliding and defeating the character. So let's go ahead and press play. And okay, so that didn't collide with it, so that there's something a little bit off there. So let's check the collision shape. And the collision shape looks okay. So why isn't this hitting? Oh, I know why. It's because the collision group is set to none. It needs to be set to enemy, and then once you come in contact with it, now it's going to be defeated. Okay, perfect. So now all we need to do is just add these walls in, which I've done a few already, and then we're going to make them invisible. So let's go ahead. I'll duplicate this guy. I'll move him over just like that. Okay, perfect. And then now let's go ahead and go into our enemy. Let's get rid of the 3D model. Let's go back into our 3D world, and let's check the collision shape on these. Okay, so the collision shape's a little bit off. We're gonna have to stretch these out just a little bit. So let's go ahead and let's move this like that. Or actually, the collision shape is fine. I just need to scale it out a little bit. Okay, so that it stretches all the way across. Okay, perfect. I think that looks good. Same here. Let's do that. Looks pretty good. Might move it over just a little bit. Let's see. Could be a little bit lower. And scale it up. And here's what I'll do. I'll make it so that this one's dialed in, and then I will make it so that it is set like that for the other ones as well. Okay, perfect. That looks good. So now what we're gonna do is I will bring my select tool. I'll get rid of this guy because I just made all the corrections right there. So I got rid of the enemies. The walls are the only things left in the ground. Okay, perfect. So let's go back to our scene. And so now what I want to do is I want to select the enemy here, and I'm going to hold command, and I'm going to be able to select my torus and my point. And what I'll do is I'll turn over this way, and what I'll do is I'll probably take this, I'll copy it, and then I'll move this guy over down just a little bit, and then let's go back, let's select these guys, hit W on my keyboard, slide them this way a little bit, and then maybe move them over just a little bit. Okay, perfect. And then this guy we're going to have to stretch out a little bit more and move him like this. Okay, perfect. So now we have like a little one off to the side. Okay, awesome. So this is starting to come together. I'm going to end the video here, but we're going to wrap this up in part 3 of how to make a game like Voodoo. So definitely check out the next video coming soon.